Nikola Tsolov enjoyed a dream weekend at Silverstone as the Campos driver did the double in Britain, setting a new record for most consecutive wins in Formula 2 and taking back the championship lead. Welcome back to the F2 show, everyone. I'm your host, Aaron Harper, and joining me today are F2 commentator Chris McCarthy and F2 journalist Jacob Orcott. Chris, welcome back. Are we in danger of having to rename this episode the Nikola Tsolov show?
Possibly. First of all, it's great to be back. British Grand Prix weekend is always a very special weekend, I think, for F2 and F3. We always draw in loads of new fans. And it's the halfway point of the season as well, isn't it? So the conversations about drivers start to get bigger and bigger about where they're going to be going next. When Arvid Lindblad done the double in F3, I think that probably was almost where the contract started to be made up for his future. So yeah, I really do think it is the Nikola Tsolov show, and I think this weekend will be looked back on as the moment he sealed his place in Formula One, be it next year or the year after.
Absolutely. I mean, the rumors are rife already. He's having to bat them away almost every single time he's in the press conference, which is almost all of them, because he was in both of the post-race ones this weekend. Jacob, you were in the paddock at the weekend. First of all, how was it? And of course, welcome back. And also, while Nikola Tsolov was the winner on track, were the fans at Silverstone and those watching at home the real winners? Because the action was just fantastic, as always, wasn't it?
That was incredible. I mean, F2 and F3 served up an absolute cracker of a weekend at Silverstone. And I think I agree with Chris in that it is slowly becoming the Nikola Tsolov show. Like you said, the rumours are beginning to swirl around his future in F1. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, because I think the focus is kind of on racing bulls, but I feel like there could be some other teams that could be sniffing around him at the moment.
Well, we have to wait and see what happens with four-time world champion Max Verstappen. Does he stay? Does he go? Does that open up a route into Formula One for the Bulgarian line? We'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, we'll be discussing his weekend in detail. Also coming up, we'll have a look at the situation for each of his closest challengers in the championship fight. We'll talk about Rafael Villagomez's best F2 weekend yet. We'll talk about Kushmini and ART. They were on form again. And we'll be having a look at seeing who needs a stronger second half to the season. But Chris, let's start with the new name of this show, by the looks of it, Nikola Tsolov. You've seen him over the last few years in Formula 3, and now you're commentating on him in Formula 2. Do you think this is the best version of Nikola Tsolov that we're seeing right now?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, when you look back at his career, he started by winning Spanish F4 very convincingly as a 16-year-old, I believe, and broke many records in that championship, which I think some still like. He then came into F3 very fresh and with an ART team that was struggling at the time, and are still now just getting back to the ART we know. But yeah, he had signs in F3 that he was really quick, but then also that he needed maybe another season to mature. When you look back on what happened at the start of his second season with Alex Dunn, and I think his third season in F3 was when he really did that. He didn't quite go on a championship run, but he started to put in really good wins across that season. And when he jumped up to F2 at the end of last year for a bit of a taste of it, he was already on the podium in his second round. So those 3 seasons in F3 have done him a really good job, especially the last one. Sometimes I think drivers jump up to F2 maybe a season too soon, but he wasn't really in a rush by the end. And now he's come in. He looked a new driver when we saw him this year, and he certainly has been one on track as well. And he's just got blistering pace. He's not really afraid to go for moves at important points in the race. And he looks really quick off the line as well, doesn't he? I mean, he's absolutely nailed that start. So yeah, I think he's a driver flying with confidence right now and not afraid of wearing the Red Bull livery. He had an Alpine livery once, but in the Red Bull livery, he's he's actually got better, I think, since he's become a Red Bull junior.
No, absolutely. It's interesting because obviously people develop at different rates and mature at different points of their personal lives. And that can, we've seen for certain drivers in Formula One, that can play an enormous amount into how well they do. And obviously, like you say, some drivers seem to step up a year early for F2. I think Tsolov has stepped in at exactly the right moment. He's feeling super comfortable in his own skin by the looks of things, and he's delivering on track. Let's have a look a little bit at his first race victory of the weekend, Jacob. That sprint race, there was a little bit of fortune in it with the mistake from Gabriele Mini, who'd led every single lap up to almost half of the final one. But Nicola had to make that happen, didn't he? Because he was hounding Mini lap after lap after lap, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in a way with Nicola, I think the saying "you make your own luck" comes to mind. And I think the sprint race was what really highlighted that growth in maturity that I've kind of witnessed in him. Because majority of F2 drivers would not wait until the last lap to make a move for the race lead. They would have sent it up the inside a lot sooner. But he kind of had the confidence to wait, force the mistake, and ultimately claim the victory. But I think you mentioned the Red Bull livery. I think everything's kind of fallen into place for Tsolov this year. You know, like you say, stepping up at the perfect time to F3. He's with a Campos team that are incredibly strong at the moment. He's got the backing of Fernando Alonso's management team, A14. I think everything's kind of falling into place for him at the moment. And if he continues this upward trajectory, you know, the sprint was kind of where he needed to work on, I feel. We knew that he was dominant in feature races, but this weekend was showing he can perform in both the sprint and the feature race as well. And I think that bodes well for the future, potentially, for him.
Absolutely, it does. And obviously, just to showcase just how good Formula 2 is, if you're new to this series, second weekend in a row that sprint race has been decided on the last lap. Don't get that every week in every other series. Chris, let's fast forward a little bit to the feature race. There was a lot of similarities in the way that Nicola delivered that victory, but perhaps was it more impressive simply because there was the pit stop involved and it was a longer format, or are they equally well executed in that respect?
I mean, I think it was equally as impressive, to be honest. You know, he put pressure on Alpine Junior Kushmine. He took the place from him, but then there came a point in the race where everyone on the option strategy, if you like, had to switch on because Villa Gomez was setting pace. It wasn't really slowing down, if you like. He just was being really consistent with his pace. And Nikola Tsolov then just started to find half a second over the rest of the drivers that were on that primary strategy. And that's ultimately what won him the race. Villa Gomez got through to second place and then simply just ran out of laps and ultimately then would have run out of tires, I think, as well. So yeah, he had more pace than any other driver on the track when it was required, and he said himself he thinks that was his best weekend in Formula 2, one of his best weekends of his career, I think. And I'd certainly agree. He made absolutely zero mistakes all weekend and was just the fastest driver on the track, and that's what won him both races. So yeah, I think it was hugely impressive and a real sign of a driver who has a lot of confidence and can see that the championship's becoming a realistic thing to win, but not just that, but F1 is becoming a realistic thing as well. And I think a lot of drivers in F1 will be looking over their shoulders at him right now and being a little bit nervous.
Absolutely. I mean, he said after the feature race victory that this is in his top 3 weekends of his career so far. And we've got a lovely article on our website for that, so go and check it out on insidef2.com. He also said on Saturday, and I asked him asked him similar questions to what I asked you, Chris, is this the best version? Is he operating at his highest level that we're seeing? And he says he's still learning with each race that's going by. And I just feel that is such a warning shot to anyone who thinks they're going to get remotely close to taking this championship away from them. He is saying that I'm doing really well already, but there is more to come. You ain't seen nothing yet, kids, because Nikola Tsolov is on an absolute tear right now. And he's got 6 race victories already this season. We're only at the halfway point, which is absolutely incredible. The record for wins in a season is 7. I am almost certain that he's going to break that. He's just been so good. Campos have been so good this season. They've won 8 races. 8 out of 14 races have been won by Campos, which is absolutely unheard of in this series. So massive props to both Nikola Tsolov, Noel Leon, and of course the Campos Racing team. They're going to be really hard to stop the rest of this season. But let's have a look at some of those rivals who will be hoping to catch Tsolov and Campos in both championships. Jacob, Gabriele Mini led most of the sprint, as we've already mentioned. And he made that mistake at Village Corner on the final lap, came home second, another podium for Mini, the latest in a string of them. Then in the feature race, he finished sixth, which I think was probably the best he could do, having lost a couple of places on the opening lap on the alternative strategy. What did you make of his weekend?
I think it was actually a decent weekend for Gabby. I think Friday put him in a difficult position for Sunday, to be honest with you. I think we've known him be quite strong on Friday, but I think it was a tricky quali session for him, whether he just didn't have the pace to compete with Tsolov. We know, well, Kamara, who got pole, we know he's got the pace on one lap, but I think the sprint race will be one of the biggest lessons learned for Gabby this year. I think you saw in the onboard camera the frustration after the race. You know, it's something we rarely see with Gabby when he is punching the steering wheel. And you could tell he knew the win was within grasp. It was half a lap left. And I feel like heading into Spa, it will be in the back of his mind. And I think it's a lesson learned where he knows maybe he needs to manage his tyres better, or needs to be more defensive, or just keep a cooler head, because I think the reaction in the cockpit showed that the pressure did get to him. And I feel that's what separates him and Tsolov at the moment, is that kind of maturity almost, and that level-headedness where Tsolov can keep his cool and force the mistake, whereas Gabby kind of succumbs to the pressure almost and makes the mistake, shall we say. So I feel it's a lesson learned for Gabby, and he's still got incredible potential, and I think he'll come back stronger in Spa.
I think he'll be buoyed a little bit by the performance in the feature race coming back through the field to P6, but he did say in the press conference after the sprint race that it was a silly error to have made. He explained it as simply he pushed harder through Abbey and Farm to try and release some of that pressure and keep Tsolov away in that first DRS zone on the Wellington Straight. And essentially, he arrived at the corner too quickly, broke too late, carried too much speed in, locked up, went wide, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, a little bit of an up and down weekend for Gabriele, but still 17 points off the championship lead. We've seen he has had a larger lead than that this season, and it's turned around. So we know what this championship's like. You can almost never predict what's going to happen. So there's every chance he turns up in Belgium next time out and takes a feature race victory with a commanding performance. So that's just the way it happens in racing. Chris, Rafael Kamara, many people's pick ahead of the season to win the Formula 2 championship and follow in the footsteps of Gabriele Bortoleto and Leonardo Fornaroli at Invicta, took the pole position, but Invicta seemed to underperform in the feature race, didn't quite have the speed. He did have to give up that place to Alex Dunn, which he took on the opening lap, was off track, may not have got a penalty, may have got a penalty, but then he didn't really progress from there. He's failed to make the most of another pole position. I feel that Monaco era, where he lost that feature race victory, is starting to look more and more costly in the face of the form of Nicolas Tsolov. Is that an assessment you'd agree with?
Yeah, I think that's a very good assessment, actually. That was a very unusual error for him to make. When you look back at his career, he's not really someone that goes out and makes big errors like that would cost him a win. But then his performance at Barcelona for me is still, I think, arguably the most outstanding we've seen of the season, and one we've seen for a long time. But yeah, it was another mistake, wasn't it? Perhaps two, one off the line, one going round the outside off the circuit, and then having to give the place back. That put him back a bit, but I still think he will take the championship fight right to the end. I really do. I mean, he's won Formula Regional, he's won Formula 3 titles. He's got a really tough challenge on his hands if he's going to beat Nicolas Tsolov this year. But I think Rafa will be right there come the final round. And I think we actually could be in for a very close championship fight. Nicolas Tsolov is having his moment now, and he's having his real form. But, this Formula 2 grid is full of drivers who have the potential to go to Formula 1. And Rafa is definitely one of those. And I think he'll have his run at some point, which will bring him back into this championship fight. And I still think he is someone that could possibly make their way onto the F1 grid next year or the year after. The Ferrari will be very proud of what they've seen of him for this first half overall. He's made mistakes, but he'll certainly learn from them now. And I do think that he's got all the potential to jump up to Formula One next season, should a space open up.
I mean, I think we're kind of judging him by the trend that's been set before of drivers hopping into an Invicta, having won the F3 championship, waltzing to another championship, bouncing into an F1 team, and on they go.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no reason why Rafa Camara maybe finishes second or third this season in the championship, comes back next season, an improved driver for that year's experience, and mops up next year, and maybe then there's more seats opening up on the Formula One grid. And the third sort of contender in this battle, almost 50 points behind Nikola Tsolov now, is Alex Dunn, someone who's threatened to win pretty much every single race this season, but hasn't yet won at all. And I just feel that race pace that Rodin had early in the season seems to be escaping them. What do you make of that, Jacob?
I think it's a difficult one with Alex, because I think it's a difficult one with Rodin as a whole, because we saw at the start of the season, like you said, they had really strong race pace. You know, Alex and Martinia Stenchel were battling away in Melbourne, like we know, and all of a sudden Martinius has slipped away completely, and Alex just seems to be missing that final bit in a sense. And I think it's hard to say whether his time will come this season. I think Silverstone's maybe the weekend where Rodin will look back at the end of the season and go, that was where our championship hopes kind of properly fizzled out. Because I feel the top three in the championship are really moving forward in a sense. And I think, taking it back to the Kamara point before, I actually think this will be a really big weekend for Rafa in terms of his championship charge. And I think it'll actually be more of a positive weekend for him than a negative. But I think with Alex, the pace may not be there, in all honesty. I think Invicta, Campos and MP with Gabby do kind of have that extra bit that can pull them clear of Alex, unfortunately.
I wouldn't write Alex Dunn off just yet. We've seen just how quick he can be. He qualified on the front row this weekend. He and Rafa Camara ended up behind both Tsolov and Kushmani, because they made poor starts, really, in a different universe. I think maybe they get off the line, they run 1-2, and it's a different race. Maybe Tsolov still comes through to win. But I wouldn't write either of them off just yet. Long way still to go in this season. Lots can happen in motor racing, as we all know. And sort of underscoring that point is Rafael Villagomez, who 4 races ago, as we headed into Austria, he was propping up the Drivers' Championship. He had no points. He threatened to get lots of points, even podiums. It just hadn't come together. 4 races later, he's got 3 podiums in 4 races. Chris, an amazing weekend for Rafa Villagomez. 3rd place in the sprint, 2nd place in the feature race. Just how impressed are you with his performances in recent races?
Yeah, it's been really good, and I'm actually really pleased for him and the team as well. He's been someone that has had a bit of a difficult time of things in Formula 3 and Formula 2. He has at times threatened to show real pace, but he is just yet has never really had that breakthrough sort of weekend, has he? And now he's had it twice. So I think the 3rd place was great for him at Red Bull Ring. And maybe that's just what's turned for him, getting on the podium once again. It wasn't his first time, but yeah, to go out and do it in a feature race, I think goes a long way for drivers. Not just points, but I think to be there on Grand Prix Sunday on the podium must feel a real achievement. And Nikola Tsolov was simply the quickest driver in that race, but he pulled off the alternative strategy and took it secondly and was second and was comfortably quicker than the other drivers doing the same thing. So yeah, I'm really pleased he's had that. We'll see how he gets on now the second half of the season. But yeah, Formula 2 drivers aren't just putting themselves in the market for F1. It's Formula E, World Endurance Championship, things like that. And I think it's great for his CV to have these podiums, to his name, and he could very easily be someone that goes out there, goes and gets a victory now. So yeah, it's great for him, and I just hope the momentum continues, and I'd love to see. It shows that car possibly could see the likes of Nico Verone go out there and give it a go in a sprint race or something as well.
No, absolutely, and it's really positive for VAR, like you say, because they've threatened these sorts of results throughout the season. It's just not quite come together for whatever reason. You take Barcelona, for example, qualified in the top 10 with both cars and seemed to reverse their way out of it just through tyre wear troubles. But Red Bull Ring, Silverstone, they looked much more improved on that. So that's really positive for both of their drivers for the outlook of the rest of the season. And another team and driver pairing that's going to have a positive outlook looking towards the second half of the season is Kushmani and ART. And Jacob, they're still in their happy place. They're sort of loving life together. And it was really nice to see Kush exploiting the potential of that car once again and showing what he could do, because I feel like this is threatening to become more the norm and less of a surprise because they are starting to put it together on a more regular basis. What did you make of his weekend?
I thought it was a really positive weekend for ART as a whole. Not only Kush, but also with Taz as well. I mean, I sat down with Kush on Saturday to have a chat with him, and we were talking about kind of his move to ART as a whole. And he says that it's been almost the most seamless transition for him, whereas in the past he's struggled, because we know he jumps about teams quite a bit. But this year it just seems to be really clicking with him at the moment. And whether that's come with experience is something that he doesn't know, I don't know, nobody really knows at the moment. But it just seems he's finally found that environment within a team where it just works for him and he's able to extract the maximum out of the car. Obviously, going back to Barcelona, it was a dominant win for him in the sprint race. And I think, like you say, it could very easily become the norm now that we're expecting Kush to be flying up the front. But I think the attention also has to go to Sanopol and Trpuzak as well. I mean, you couldn't really pick a better teammate to have at this point with Kush's experience, Taz being able to learn from him. And I think if ART continue this upward trajectory and they reach the end of the year and they are fighting consistently at the front and they carry that into next season, I think if Taz stays with them for next year, he could be a real challenger for the championship potentially, because the experience and the knowledge that Kush will have, not only from Formula 2 as a whole, but also the importance of a team environment and the importance of what makes a team tick. He's been at, I think, 4 different teams now. He will know what it is that makes a Formula 2 team work and what will win them races. And I feel if he can transfer that knowledge, as much of it as possible, to Taz, combine that with Sanopol's pace, I think he could be a force to be reckoned with next year.
Absolutely. It's great to see these drivers making these breakthroughs. Even if they're 3-4 seasons into their F2 career, there's still that opportunity to make that breakthrough, step up, show what you're capable of. And like Chris mentioned, they're not just fighting for a seat in Formula 1. There's other options, Formula E, World Endurance Championship, all sorts. They may do a Kimi Räikkönen and go and do some rallying or something if they so wish, because why not? But it's great to see Inter Trpuzak making that breakthrough as well, because obviously he had to withdraw from the round in Montreal after his qualifying accidents. That would have dented his progress in terms of his development and understanding the car. But points in all of the last 3 races after that feature race, P5 in Red Bull Ring, scoring in both races this weekend in Silverstone. So he's heading in the right direction. We are at the midpoint of the season, and we've spoken about some of the drivers who have enjoyed success over the first half of it, but there will be plenty of drivers and teams who will be looking to the second half of the season and thinking, this is our opportunity to step up and show what we can do, and we need to do better. So, Chris, I'll start with you. Who will you be sort of looking at over the next 5-6 rounds and thinking they need to really do a bit more, but show us what they can do? They need to make that breakthrough that we're seeing from Kushmani and ART.
I think Dino Beganovic. I think many would have had him down as a championship contender, myself included. I mean, he won Formula Regional against a very good grid when he did it. But bad luck seems to have followed him around since then. It did so in Formula 3. and it did so again, I think, in Formula 2 this season. But he's had opportunities to do FP1, and I think knows that this is really the time for him now. He's going to have to go out there and at least fight for a championship podium. If not, Nicola Tsolov might be too far away for him, but he has to, I think, at least go and get some consistent race wins, just to prove to Ferrari that he's worthy of jumping up with them into Formula One in some role. So yeah, I think personally it's Dino Beganovic, and I think there is an element of when the bad luck has followed him around, you can see how much of a hit that has been to him, because I think he knows this is a really crucial season for him. So I hope for his sake that he gets some consistent results going in terms of podiums. Dan seemed to struggle a little bit when we were at Red Bull Ring, but yeah, I think he's the one really for me. If I had to pick one driver that needs to come out the blocks now at Spa and get a win.
I'll come to you in a moment, Jacob, but I'm going to go with Josh Dirksen, because we saw in his time at AIX that there was real potential there. And this year, moving to Invicta and starting the season as he did last year with that sprint race victory, I thought this is the moment where he's going to step forward and really show not just his speed, but his consistency, and that he can put it all together. But he's had a really messy first half of the season, just littered with incidents and grid drops. And then he's just sort of gone missing in certain races at times, which is very un-Invicta-like, because they're usually very good with both of their cars. I don't know whether that's a car and team thing or a driver and team thing or just a driver thing, but I expected a little bit more from that partnership to this point of the season, and I'd like to see him really kick on, and in a similar sort of vein to what you're saying about Dino Beganovic, really put those wins together, show us that he can do it on a regular basis, and really challenge the top places. He is down in 15th so far with just 26 points, while his teammate has 94 points. So he'll be looking at that and thinking there needs to be a step up, not maybe perhaps in performance, but absolutely in results that are coming to him. And that starts by just maybe tidying a few things up, not getting impeding penalties in qualifying and collisions during races and things like that. Jacob, Dino Beganovic and Josh Dirksen, do you agree with either of those two, or are you going to pick somebody different?
I'm going to go with somebody different. I agree with those two, but I'm going to go with somebody different. And I'm actually going to go with a team. And I feel that team is high tech at the moment. I don't think there's a reason for them not to be performing at the moment. You know, they've got Ollie Oakes at the helm, who has got incredible amounts of experience in F1. You know, he should be transferring that to the team. And you've got Miata, obviously he got front row and then just kind of slipped back in the race. He's now into his third season, I think. And, you know, the excuses in the past of he doesn't know the tracks, it's a transition. In my eyes, I don't feel they wash at the moment. And I feel that is where the question needs to be asked of, okay, why isn't he performing? What's missing? And then I think with Colton Herta, there's a quote that Kamara said to me a few races ago. And he said, a car's a car. And that I am inclined to agree with. We know Herta has the pace in an IndyCar. We know he can be absolutely dominant there. And I feel if he kind of had that pace to be competing at the front in F2 and be alongside the likes of Tsolov and Kamara, we would have seen that now. And I think the question now does kind of go to, okay, what is it within maybe High Tech as a whole, as a team, that isn't quite clicking for the team at the moment, and what's missing for them? So I feel coming into Spa, that's where they really need to kick on. You know, we've seen glimmers of it. We obviously had Herta doing quite well in Miami practice. We've seen Miata get the front row. There's pace there, but it's not being fully extracted at the moment. And that, I think, if Herta wants to get an F1 drive and if Miata wants to start winning races, then they really need to kick on as a team.
Just to follow up on your point about Colton Herta, he was in a sort of media roundtable on Thursday, which I was a part of, and he was asked about the similarities and differences between the Indy car and the F2 car. And I think what we've got to remember with Colton is he has spent many seasons in the IndyCar series. It's a very different type of car. The tires are very different. Circuits that he's not been to before. Now he's in the Formula 2 series. And he was basically saying that the inputs that he can put in are completely different. So there's not really much transition. He's having to relearn and readapt the way he drives. And he said there's more similarity at the moment between the current generation of Formula One cars and the IndyCar series. So that's quite interesting. And I think that coming from IndyCar to F2, it's such a cultural shift as well. We've seen Miata have those struggles coming from Super Formula to the European circuits. It can be quite tricky. And like Colton is very experienced. You hope that he'd be pulling on that. And High Tech are a good team. And I agree with you that we expected a bit more from High Tech this season because they've gone well in the last few seasons. But I think there's a lot of learning that Colton Herta needs to do yet. I think if we're at the same point next season, I think that's when the big questions need to be asked, because obviously he will be then angling completely on this is to get into Formula One with Cadillac, because Perez and Bottas will both be out of contract by that point, or potentially out of contract. So, yeah, I mean, Chris, just to come to you, obviously Colton Herta was the big signing coming into the season. How would you assess his season so far? There's work to do, isn't there?
Yeah, it's been a bit disappointing. I completely agree with Jacob, and I think Miami and Canada was a real opportunity for them to go and get some good performances. There was no, I guess, no one could say that they had experience. That Kushmini took advantage of that, used his experience just driving an F2 car to get up to speed quickly. And I think Nico Verone actually used his experience pretty well and proved that, if everyone's on the same, everyone has the same experience at a circuit, then he's going to be a competitive driver. But we didn't really see that from the High Tech team. I mean, Colton was quickest in practice, wasn't he, at Miami? And then Canada, they just they weren't really there. So yeah, I think that was really a good observation for us as fans to see where does everyone stand. And I think we saw the quickest drivers learn the fastest, if you like. So yeah, for them not to do anything in those 2 rounds particularly was, for me, I think they'll see that as a real disappointment. And I do think Ollie Oaks, across the board at High Tech, they've got one driver in F3 who's putting in some really encouraging performances, but overall they're really struggling. So there definitely is work to do for them.
And I think Aaron, I think the struggle for Cadillac, well, not struggle, I think the question that Cadillac now has is, like you say, for next year with Colton, I feel their best shot at getting an American into their F1 seat is bring Ugachukwu into F2 and back him as well. And I feel at that point, you put Ugachukwu and Herta head to head, and whichever one prevails there, that's the one that you put in the F1 seat.
Yeah, I think McLaren will. I think McLaren will regret dropping Ugachukwu because he's a free agent. Him and Teofil Noah are essentially free agents, if you like. And I think there's currently going to be teams racing to sign those two. I think we've got that's going to probably, you can argue, be the next American going into Formula One. So with the talent he's showing, so I'll be interested to see if they're still wearing white race suits by the end of this season.
We are dangerously close to drifting into Formula 3 territories. But we might see them on the grid in Formula 2 next season. And of course, if they continue their performances in the F3 series, they will probably graduate to Formula 2. Let's have a look at the championship standings then before we leave you. Nikola Tsolov, after his double victory in Silverstone, now leads the way by 17 points ahead of MP Motorsport's Gabriele Mini. Rafael Camara is 47 points behind, with Alex Dunn 49 back. Kushmani's weekend sees him jump ahead of Dino Beganovic and Martina Stenchel. He failed to score for the 3rd weekend in a row. A real downturn in form for the Norwegian. Mani is now up to 6th, and Rafael Villagomez's podiums have moved him up to 10th. In the team's standings, Campos are running away with this year's championship. They're 58 points ahead of MP, who are 12 ahead of Rodin and 32 clear of defending champions Invicta. ART have moved up to 5th ahead of Dams, and VAR have led ahead of Prema thanks to Villagomez's runs of podium, which I think just shows the struggles that Prema are having in recent years. But that is a story for another day. That is all for now. My thanks go to Chris and Jacob for joining me. But before we go, I want you guys to tell us in the comments, will Nikola Tsolov now take the 2026 Formula 2 Championship as we are at the halfway point of the season. The driver leading the way at the halfway stage in the last 4 years has gone on to clinch the championship. The last driver to be not leading the championship and win it was Oscar Piastri, 2021. So is anyone going to do like the Australian did? We'll have to wait and see. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you stay up to speed with everything Formula 2. There's more F2 content on our website and in our Discord server, which is linked in the description. F2 has a week off, and then we head to the legendary Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium next. Will anyone be able to halt the Tsolov Express there? I am looking forward to finding out if anybody can. But from the track to your headphones, this has been the F2 Show.